Most times, fans do not see behind the scenes of some of Hollywood's most iconic celebrities. This is because these celebrities use the glitz and glamour of Hollywood to hide a much darker side to their lives. Most of these celebrities have fought winning battles with alcohol and sometimes substance abuse, while some weren't so lucky. Others have had to drink alcohol throughout their lives, either privately or under the judging eyes of their fans. So, join us as we explore Hollywood celebrities who are drunk all the time. First on the list is Richard Pryor, who was almost impossible to keep out of conversation about great comedians without mentioning him. He was one of the trailblazers of black comedy, using his life experiences to make people laugh. But, like almost all good celebrities, he had his fair share of demons, one of which came in a bottle. Pryor often joked about his alcohol problem, saying that others could have a drink and stop, but he just kept drinking until the bartender told him they had no more liquor. In 1989, Pryor reached an all-time low when he poured high-proof rum on himself and set himself on fire. While some claimed it must have been an accident given his alcohol problem, that seems difficult to believe. Either way, the incident led to serious injuries. Pryor had to run down Parthenia Street in Los Angeles, completely engulfed in flames, until the police stopped him and took him to the hospital. He suffered second-degree burns, which required him to spend 6 weeks in the hospital. This next celebrity might not be a comedian, but she and Richard Pryor shared a similar demon. Chaka Khan. If you've heard the song I'm Every Woman, then you've probably heard of Chaka Khan, the fierce songstress and actress with an even fiercer voice. But fame was something she found tough, so she sought solace in a bottle. Khan faced challenging times in her career as she struggled with alcohol and drugs for almost 10 years. During this period, it was no surprise that she wasn't releasing new music, or even focusing on her career as a whole. Luckily, Khan had good people around her, like her friend Etta James, who helped her get the help she needed. Ever since then, she has been sober. Unlike Chaka Khan, this next celebrity wasn't able to stay on the sober wagon for too long. Redd Foxx. Redd Foxx was another of Hollywood's comedy legends, known for cracking jokes that left audiences laughing in their seats for hours. He was famous for his hilarious role in Sanford and Son. But for someone who had such a funny life on screen, his life off-screen was anything but amusing. He battled alcohol and drug addiction, and there were several times during his shows when he would have a cup of alcohol and a cigarette with him on stage. It was said that he had a serious drinking problem. Foxx was so open about his drinking and drug use that he wore a spoon around his neck, allowing him to indulge even while on set. Somehow, despite his struggles with alcohol and drugs, his humor off-screen never faltered. This led many to believe he had a handle on his problems. But compared to Samuel L. Jackson's alcohol issue, it is a stark contrast. Samuel L. Jackson. It is undeniable that Samuel L. Jackson is one of the biggest actors out of Hollywood, starring in some of the biggest movies of all time like The Avengers and Django Unchained, just to name a few. But like every success story, Jackson has had some hard times of his own. In the early 70s, when he first came to Hollywood as a struggling actor who could barely get roles but had a family to feed, he fell into despair, where alcohol and drugs were his coping mechanisms. However, the alcohol and drugs were affecting his life and his career because he could barely function properly with them, and at the same time, he couldn't do without them, and that was when he decided that he had to get clean. Amy Winehouse. For the case of Amy Winehouse, her constant struggle with alcohol and drugs was not a secret, as most of her alcohol and drug-induced haze made headlines and front-page news. When she released her first album in 2003 at the age of 20, it earned her financial freedom, and that was when her drinking and drug problem truly started. Although her addiction inspired her greatest work, it also stole her talent and her life. Upon receiving her first paycheck, she bought her first apartment in London's Camden neighborhood, which was the mecca for drug dealers and punk musicians. As you could tell, Winehouse embraced her new environment vices with open arms. Winehouse's addiction spiraled out of control, and she did agree to go to rehab more than once, but the months and years in between her trips to rehab were increasingly sad and filled with chaos. In 2007, she was photographed wandering around Camden in her bra and jeans, looking very emaciated. And soon after, in 2008, footage of Winehouse smoking crack showed up in an English tabloid. Then, in the summer of 2008, she was diagnosed with emphysema, a warning that more smoking and drinking would ruin her natural gifts. You would think this would jolt the star to reality, but sadly it did not, because on July 23, 2011, Amy Winehouse was found dead in her apartment from alcohol poisoning. Although the ending of their stories are not similar, this next celebrity and Amy Winehouse had a somewhat similar life. Demi Lovato. Growing up as a kid meant seeing Demi Lovato on your screen all the time. She was the ultimate teenage pop star, but sometimes being a pop star came with a whole lot of challenges. Just as the glamorous part of her life was public, so was the dark side. Her constant battle with alcohol and substance abuse is a tale that almost everyone is familiar with. Her journey with alcohol and drug addiction started in 2009 when she was in high school. She moved with the popular stars and began getting into the party scene. She said she was 17 when she first tried cocaine and absolutely loved the feeling. In 2010, she entered a treatment center for her alcohol and drug problems after an altercation with a backup dancer that she couldn't even remember. It served as a wake-up call for the superstar to get help. Sadly, the wake-up call didn't last. By 2011, she was still using drugs and drinking alcohol, often sneaking it into hotel rooms, concerts, and even planes. The night before her appearance on American Idol, she invited 2 random people to her room and got incredibly drunk. It was at that point she knew she needed help, so she once again checked herself into rehab. This worked out well for her until she relapsed again in 2018. Lovato seemed to have an on and off relationship with alcohol and drugs, but as of now, it seems the relationship is off, as far as anyone can tell. But unlike Demi Lovato, this next celebrity had a tragic end. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead was the daughter of an Alabama congressman who decided to leave home at age 15 to chase an acting career in New York. She stayed at the famed Algonquin Hotel, and you can imagine how that played out for a 15-year-old. Living in the hotel gave her easy access to the hard-drinking high society of New York and introduced her to the famous Algonquin Round Table. Her constant partying caused Frank Case, the owner of Algonquin, to say that, "I could either run the hotel or look after Tallulah Bankhead. I can't do both." When she became a working actress, her substance palette expanded. She was famous for finishing a fifth of whiskey in under 30 minutes, snort poppers, take horse tranquilizers, and mix herself a special cocktail of Coca-Cola and spirits of ammonia. It was certainly a miracle she lived as long as she did, because her body could only take so much, and as time passed, her beauty and health began to deteriorate, but her appetite for destruction never did. Because towards the end of her life, she consumed over a quarter of bourbon a day, mixed with a cocktail of pills, both legal and illegal, as well as cocaine. And at age 66, her body just couldn't take it anymore. She passed away. But if you think Tallulah Bankhead's story was tragic, then get ready to meet this next Hollywood celebrity who was also mainly a boxer. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson once admitted that he was on the verge of dying because he was a serious alcoholic. Mike Tyson is who most fighters hope to be. His legendary career and quick rise to fame cemented him as one of the greats. But sometimes even the greats have to fight demons. One of the demons he fought was his dependence on alcohol. He had a very turbulent personal life, and his escape from that was alcohol. He would lie and pretend to people that he hadn't had too much to drink. Meanwhile, he would be on his 6th, or sometimes he would lie that he was sober when he was still actively drinking. But despite all of these, Mike Tyson gave himself a wake-up call and decided to reinvent himself. Unlike Mike Tyson, this next celebrity did not get as lucky as he did. Whitney Houston. She was called the voice of her generation, but sadly she didn't last long enough because her vices got the best of her. Whitney Houston was known for her stunning voice and her amazing acting, but sadly, she was also known for her abusive marriage, battle with alcohol, and her drug addictions. During her time alive, she was one of the best-selling singers and earned a lot of awards, but her private life turned public was rocky and turbulent. There were so many reports that their marriage was filled with alcohol and substance abuse, with both of them battling addiction. There were times when she would lock herself in her dressing room after her show or concerts and just get drunk without refusing to see anyone but Bobby. It got so bad that she could barely perform some of her shows, causing fans to leave in anger. She did try to go to rehab so many times, but she always relapsed and could not seem to stay on the sober wagon for too long. And on February 11, 2012, Whitney Houston was found dead in her bathtub at the age of 48. Just like Whitney Houston, this next young starlet also fought a losing battle with alcohol. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton came to Hollywood at age 20, but sadly she left not just Hollywood, but the world at age 39. During her glory days, she was an actress and a model who reached very lofty heights, but soon fell from grace into an alcohol and drug-induced haze that ended her life. Payton entered Hollywood during its golden era, where there were parties on every block and the booze was overflowing, so she somehow got caught in the whirlwind, which earned her the nickname Queen of Nightclubs. Payton was able to make appearances in several big pictures like Trapped, Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, and Only the Valiant. But before long it became clear that her party and drinking lifestyle became more important than her career. Payton quickly became a shadow of herself as her life spiraled out of control. She went from staying in fine apartments to living in a Skid Row apartment. Now that's a big fall from grace. In her memoir, she wrote, "I always have too much rosé wine in me." She passed away at age 39 from alcohol-induced heart and kidney disease. Payton was not the only Hollywood star that let alcohol control her life. This next celebrity also had her fair share of struggles with alcohol. Ethel Barrymore. There are two things the Baltimore family is known for: their exceptional talents in theater and their dangerous appetites for social vices. So when Ethel Barrymore's career took flight in the 1890s and she was dubbed the First Lady of American Theater, everyone expected her to toe the same path her family toed, and sadly, she did not disappoint. At the pinnacle of her career, she began battling with alcohol and it became her therapist whenever she went through a difficult time. Everyone thought like brother, like sister, because just like her brother, she had become a prisoner of alcohol, but luckily for her in her 30s, she took over the reins of her own life. "No one in my family should drink because it's poisonous to us." Ethel continued to grace her stage and screen with her presence until the 1950s, outliving her brothers, who also battled their own demons. But things didn't turn out so well for our next celebrity. Richard Mitchum. Richard Mitchum definitely did not fit the description of a pretty boy. He was a dark, brooding force that was even darker when he was drunk. He became popular not for his on-screen performance, but rather for his off-screen activities. Robert Mitchum was an alcoholic and a drug user. This one time, he ended up in the police station after falling victim of a police sting, looking for Hollywood partygoers. He even mentioned that when he filmed with Frank Sinatra, Broderick Crawford, and Lee Marvin in Not as a Stranger, he claimed it was more of a brewery than an actual cast. Putting all four of them together was a recipe for disaster because they drank from sunup till sundown, they trashed hotel rooms, threw serious parties, and even one time Crawford was thrown off the balcony. There were times Mitchum would be so drunk on set that he would actually forget he was acting. During the filming of His Kind of Woman, there was a scene where his character was attacked by thugs, and because he had started drinking early, he forgot the whole part of acting and started beating the stuntmen up. But there is only so much a man's body can take, and by the age of 79, he died of lung cancer and emphysema. Well, this next celebrity life took the same path Richard Mitchum did. Wendy Williams. She was the queen of television till she wasn't. She had to give up her crown because her alcohol and substance abuse got the better of her. Wendy Williams never shied away from talking about her addiction problems and how much of a functioning addict she was. She claimed she could balance her life, her career, and her vices. But we all know how that turned out in the end. She had a very crazy routine. Go to her show in the morning, then party till the next day and get a few hours of sleep. Everyone around her saw this unhealthy habit, but no one thought to step in. Wendy Williams realized that no one was going to help her, so in 2018, she took it upon herself to get better by checking herself into rehab. Despite her addiction nearly costing her career, she was able to bounce back. Humphrey Bogart. Fans in the early 50s who knew Humphrey Bogart knew him not only for his distinctive acting, but also for the scar on his face. Most publicists have tried to cover up the origin of the scar as an accident during his childhood, but Bogart's drinking buddies knew that the scar came from a bar fight. Aside from being a good actor, he also had a very serious relationship with alcohol, and during his early days as a Broadway actor, he was known for drinking till he fell asleep at a bar, and if anyone tried to wake him, it usually ended up in a fight. So because of that, he got kicked out of so many productions. You would think he would find a solution to his alcohol problem, right? Well, Bogart had a better idea. He took his drinking problem to Hollywood, where he drank with Frank Sinatra and claimed to have been sober just once and said it was the worst afternoon of his life. This next celebrity might be no Humphrey Bogart, but you bet he could probably outdrink him in a competition. Richard Harris. Richard Harris was every bit the actor and every bit the alcoholic. He was a member of the O'Toole, Burton, and Oliver Reed gang, but unlike most celebrities, his drinking problem started way before he joined Hollywood. The Irish-born was already causing drunken trouble as a teenager, once crashing his father's truck after having a few pints at the local pub. Finding success and fame allowed him to live the life he really wanted, which meant consuming up to 2.5 bottles of vodka per day and becoming a regular in the London pub scene. His usual was an order of 6 double vodkas, which would be lined up by his favorite bartenders who were familiar with his orders. Once, during a drunken haze, he was found lying in the middle of the street by a local policeman, and when he was asked what he was doing, he responded by saying the world was spinning. But despite his battle with alcohol, Harris survived long enough before dying at the age of 72. Unfortunately, this next celebrity did not get as lucky as Harris did with his drinking problems. W.C. Fields. Imagine a person who was so much of an alcoholic that he referred to alcohol as lemonade. W.C. Fields was a man popular for a funny principle regarding alcohol. I have never imbibed while sleeping, and I drink nothing stronger than gin before breakfast. Williams Claude Dukenfield was born during the period of the Great Experiment, when America put a prohibition on the sale of alcohol, but prohibition did not stop W.C. Fields. He would hoard so many bottles of whiskey and gin in his attic that he got so used to it that even after prohibition ended, he would keep his emergency stash in his home in the event when prohibition came back again. There was even a funny story that while on set, he would put gin martinis in his vacuum flask and refer to it as his lemonade. But sadly, that which he loved the most eventually took his life. In 1946, W.C. Fields died from cirrhosis of the liver on Christmas Day at the age of 66. Oliver Reed. In the late 60s and early 70s, Oliver Reed was known for his impressive performances in films and was movie royalty. However, reality doesn't sometimes match movies, because Reed's charms on screen ended on screen while in person he was an alcoholic who barely knew what it meant to be sober. His legendary capacity for alcohol consumption astounded even his fellow actors. David Hemming, another actor and producer, claimed that Reed would down 20 pints of lager with a gin or creme de menthe chaser and still have the stamina to run a mile for a wager. In one astonishing story, Reed reportedly consumed a jaw-dropping 126 pints of beer in just 24 hours, capping off the feat with a horizontal handstand on the bar. Reed's drunken escapades are still told to this day because they were both chaotic and violent. Reed once climbed a chimney naked, masquerading as Santa Claus, urinated on the Australian flag bag, and even lay inebriated on an airport baggage conveyor. While shooting his last film, Gladiator, he embarked on a night of heavy drinking, consuming 8 bottles of beer, 3 bottles of rum, and multiple shots of whiskey. Tragically, his body could not withstand his destructive lifestyle, which led to a heart attack, and he passed away shortly thereafter. Reflecting on his journey, he often expressed just one regret that he hadn't managed to drink every pub dry and sleep with every woman on the planet. Anne Margaret. Anne Margaret was known as one of the original sex kittens and a girl who knew how to have a good time, most likely because she usually knew where the best alcohol was. Anne Margaret's struggle with alcohol was believed to have started on the set of the student protest drama RPM, where she started drinking to overcome her anxiety about the film's nude scene. But before long, she got dependent on it. By 1971, she was incapable of separating fantasy from reality. She would drink a fifth of scotch and pass out, wake up, drink some more, and pass out again. But fortunately, in 1980, Anne quit drinking for good and luckily has been off the wagon since then. This next celebrity might be no Anne Margaret, but he sure could stand toe-to-toe with her in a drinking competition. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was one of the most iconic singers of his generation, but it's not just his singing that makes him well known. He was pretty well known for his crazy alcohol addiction. While most people would rather have whiskey at night with Frank Sinatra, there was no time limit when it came to drinking. Sources even claimed that he preferred his Jack Daniels any time of the day. He even had a special concoction, 4 ice cubes, 2 fingers of Jack, and a splash of water. But this did not stop him from drinking an entire bottle of Jack Daniels, much to the astonishment of his doctor. As lively as Sinatra seemed on screen, his mood would take a drastic turn anytime he took alcohol, and friends claimed he became extremely temperamental, leading to clashes with journalists and even cast members. There was even a time when his ex-wife had to hide herself in their room when he took gin, because that automatically meant he would become aggressive. You are probably wondering how bad his drinking addiction was, right? Well, Sinatra and a couple of his friends used to call themselves the American Olympic Drinking Squad. This just shows how much alcohol Sinatra consumed. Sinatra died in 1988, leaving behind him a legacy that is inextricably linked to his love for booze. He was put to rest with a bottle of Jack Daniel's, a fitting homage to his long-standing relationship with the much-beloved whiskey brand. While most of these stories sound tragic, they just go to show that even the brightest stars have their darkest moments. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Retro America so you don't miss the next ones.